Okay, everyone, I'm back. We're going to prepare that heat diffuser plate first before we start adding these felt furniture feet and the heating pads you see in the back here. If your garage is like my garage, this thing is got all kinds of oil and dust on it, and that's going to prevent the adhesive from sticking to this properly for both the felt pads and the heating pads. So I'm going to clean this with alcohol first. I actually cleaned it before, but then I accidentally touched it with my fingers again. So all I'm doing is putting a little alcohol on a shop towel and just rubbing it all around, getting all those oils off. It's also taking the red print off, but that's okay. I actually like having the red print on the aluminum. Looks kind of raw and unassuming. So I think that's good, and I'm going to use 5 pads, so I'll put one in each of the corners and then, one in the middle. So these things are really simple. Just pop them off. They're already sticky. Put one there. Put another one there. Oop, sticking to my glove. And one. Oh, yeah. Gotta be smarter than the adhesive. All right. And the last one will go right in the middle there. And then I might have to step away from the camera to get these things started. Yeah, can't do this with my gloves, so I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. So I've got, these things actually came in a pack of 5 off of Amazon, I think. I'm only going to use 4, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. That should be plenty. Plus, I don't really have room for the 5th one. So I will just do that. I'll mash all this stuff down a little bit later, massage it in in my house, not in my cold garage. Make sure everything's adhering. Although once I get it wrapped in foam, it's not going to matter, I think. And as I'm doing this, I forgot to tell you one other thing I'm going to do with this, which is, let me point towards the battery again. So, kind of deathly afraid of this moving around and touching some of the terminals at the edge. So, after I'm done with this, I gotta dig it out. It's buried. I'm gonna get what is that yellow tape that insulates. Anyway, I'll figure it out. I'll figure out the name, but I'm gonna put that around the edges to make sure that if it slides around a little bit, contacts a terminal, that it's not going to cause a short circuit. So let's continue this. Now, the literature that comes with these things say this adhesive is rated to like, what was it, 200 centigrade? So yeah, I don't think the adhesive is going to be a problem. All right, so I'm going to take this, go find that that special tape that I can't remember the name of. So one thing I forgot to mention is when you cut this aluminum sheet, no matter how you do it, these edges will be sharp and the corners will catch on everything. So one of the things I like to do is just, when I cut these with the shear, also nibble off the corner, but you still end up with sharp edges. So you can take some Scotch-Brite, sandpaper, or I just take my belt sander and kind of wiggle it back and forth, and that pretty much takes care of the sharp edges, and that'll be important when we pull these wires across this edge. I'll probably end up adding some heat shrink to provide some protection as well, but you definitely want to get rid of the sharp edge because it will cut into things. But what I want to show this time is tidying up these wires a little bit. They're going to be under the foam sheet that I'm going to use to insulate the battery, but one of the things I need to do is keep track of which wire's which, so I'm not connecting up like a positive to both of these instead of a positive and negative. So what I'm going to do is use a little lacing cord. Used quite a bit in aviation, and it's a little bit old school, but I like it because if you're going to use like zip ties, those can put a lot of pressure on wire, and the ribbing that locks the zip tie in can actually rub or wear into the wire insulation, and you don't want that. The lacing cord, this particular variety, is nylon, and I guess one of the hallmarks of lacing cord is that it is infused with like a waxy material. And what that does is two things. First thing it does is as you tie the knot around the wire, it prevents some binding. So you get sort of like an even clamping on the wire. The second thing it does is it locks in the knot that you're going to tie. It provides, when it solidifies, after as you tighten the knot, it creates friction, creates heat, melts the wax. As it re-solidifies, it helps lock the knot in. So there's a special type of knot that you tie with these things. It's if you look up the airplane FAA advisory circular, it's AC 4313-1B. It's kind of like the Aircraft Mechanics Bible. The typical knot for these things is you first tie a clove hitch, and then you tie a square knot on top of the clove hitch to lock it in. So I'll be demonstrating that here right now. So I like to pre-cut the the lacing cord to, a decent length. You're going to waste a lot of it, but it's cheap enough. You want it long enough so you can easily work it with your hands. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the left two wires on these two pads and the clove hitch. So I don't know how everyone else ties it, but I kind of start like that, flip it over. Oh, here we go. And then you're going to bring it, I flip it over to the right, bring it back around to the left. And then you want to tuck it back under, okay? And that's a clove hitch. Now I'm going to tighten it up a little bit, scoot this up. Okay, well, there we go. Right about there. Kind of relock it in. And then the square knot. So you can easily tie a granny knot if you're careful. The way I like to do this is either, if you're going to start left over right, you want to finish right over left. Or if you do right over left, you want to finish with left over right. So this is left over right, and then right over left. And I give it a good tug, a little snap, and then a pair of scissors. And now we've got a pretty good knot on there. So I'm going to do the next one. Again, create that clove hitch first. Gently tighten the clove hitch so I can get the knot where I want it. Okay, that's good. So I'll just lock, tighten that up right there. And I'll do left over right. And then right over left. And again, that's a square knot. If you do left over left, then left over left, you're going to end up with a granny knot and it won't hold. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is grab the bottoms here. And what I'll do is probably tie the knot, maybe I'll tie it up here. Again, trying to get that clove hitch started. And I'll just kind of gently tighten it so I can reposition it where I want it. And there it looks about good. So I'll just tighten that up. So left over right. And right over left. And it gives me the square knot to lock the clove hitch in. And then I'm going to grab, all the wires on the right side of the pad and kind of do the same thing. So, kind of get that clove hitch started. There we go. Kind of get that up. That looks good. Tighten up the clove hitch a little bit. Left over right. Then right over left. It doesn't matter if you start left or right, just as long as you finish in the other direction. So now I've got all the lefts in a bundle and all the right side wires in a bundle. So now I can make one of these positive, one of these negative, and I'll be right back for the next part. Okay, while I was off camera, I decided to lace up more of the length so it's more manageable. And then took my cable cutters and I just made everything flush, same length, stripped it back a little bit. And this is a barrel connector, butt splice. So some people like to solder all this, but Solder on stranded wire is like a big no-no. It creates stress concentrations, and the wire will eventually fatigue and break, and you won't have a good connection anymore. And the way to properly do this is with either a butt splice, or you can get a terminal strip and crimp terminal rings onto each one of these wires. That's a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more expensive. Those terminal strips, you know, I forget how much they go for, but they're definitely more expensive than these butt splices. So I don't generally like jamming 3 or 4 wires into these things, but general rule of thumb, when you double up a wire, it jumps down or up 2 gauges. So these are 22 gauge wires. If I put 2 of them together, that makes it about 20 gauge thickness. If I put 4 of them together, so two pairs, that makes it 18. This is about 18 to 22 gauge butt splice, and I think it's going to work. We'll see. Proper crimp tool. This is a cheap Amazon one, but you don't want to use the crimp tool that comes, you know, from Walmart or your local auto supply shop. You want a ratcheting crimper because it will release at the right pressure. So the way I like to do this is get it all started. Kind of like that. Get the first kind of crimp on it. First click, I mean. And then I'm not going to twist these wires ahead of time. They'll get kind of tapered on their own when I jam it in. And what I like to do is take some dielectric grease and put it all around. That will help oxidation from forming. It's an insulator, but as you mechanically crimp it, it gets pushed out of the way, and you'll get metal-to-metal contact. And then away from the point of contact is where the dielectric grease gets pushed, and it helps form an airtight seal. So I am going to put heat shrink around this eventually, but not right now. So yeah, I don't like that. Let me try that again. It didn't go in as far as I wanted it to. All right, let's try that. I like just holding a little inward pressure on this as I do it. There, the ratchet released. And you always want to give a little tug. Make sure that it actually took. That's a common mistake, is not giving the wires a little tug before, after you do this, to make sure you actually got a good crimp. If you pull hard enough, it will come out. These things are only designed to put so much pressure on the wire, but that's a good crimp. So let me get the other one stripped. Let me do it right now. Stripping these a little bit longer than I normally would if I'm just putting a ring terminal on. So I want to make sure they get into that butt splice, the butt connector, really good. All right, that looks pretty good. So get these goobered up, and then get that started. Get my wires back together. Oops. Man, this dielectric grease is really slippery. So yeah, well, I might want to get these just a little twist to help them out. All right. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. That's good. Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect. It's holding. Maybe if I were to do another one, I would just try the terminal strip, because I like that a lot better than this, but this is okay. All right, I'll be right back. I gotta go grab some wire to crimp in the other end, and also get some heat shrink to go over this. All right, be right back. What I did off camera was get some heat shrink tube. This is Adhesive-line heat shrink. So as you heat it up, it's going to not only shrink, but there's an adhesive on the inside that will melt and it'll help create some water and airtight connections. It's not going to do it here because of the 4 wires I'm using. There's going to be ways for air and water to get in, but not really looking to waterproof it anyway. It's just I had the stuff laying around, so I'm using it. Like a lot of stuff, you want to make sure certain parts are on before you do the next step, because if you're using zip cord like I am, you're not going to be able to get this heat shrink on after you crimp. If you take the zip cord, rip it apart, and do a single wire, yeah, you just slip the heat shrink over that single wire, and you're good. I'm going to use the zip cord and keep it zipped together, just to keep it neater. So again, I'm going to get this set up with a single click to help me get started, almost like a third hand. And the other thing I did off screen was goober this up with dielectric grease, because it is bare copper. And all right, I'm gonna give that a tug. It's good. I'm gonna open this up a little bit more, and I'm gonna get this started. Okay. All right, give that a tug. And for this application where you've just got resistive heaters, it doesn't matter which side's positive and which side's negative. So now what I'm going to do is slip these over. I always like feeling around to make sure that it's roughly centered over the butt splice. Okay, so this next part's pretty cool. You can buy these at the big box store. Sometimes they're sold as creme brulee torches. It's just a butane torch. You can use a hot air gun, a Bic lighter, butane torch. You just don't want to put like the flame directly on the heat shrink. You want to just kind of keep the flame away and just get the heat, not the flame, on the heat shrink. This stuff will eventually burn, and this is pretty hot. A hot air gun is better in terms of like not burning things. So this one always takes 2 clicks to get started. And then just go back and forth. Flip it over. Okay. That was probably just a little bit too much heat. There's certain wires, snake skin, that would just melt with me doing that. These wires, it wasn't so important. I know exactly how much heat abuse they can take, and that's pretty good. So now I've got this battery heater on a diffuser plate so I don't get hot spots. I just need to, I'll test this out here in a second. I'll strip those, hook them up to a 12-volt battery, and this won't be a good test of how hot it gets because it's not insulated. Eventually this will all be insulated with the battery, and it'll get hotter than I'm about to try. But just looking for function right now, not temperature, and anything I get, it's going to be better than nothing. All right, I'm back. So did something really sketchy. Got some alligator clips, put them on my new battery, and then connected them to my battery heater. And the good news is if you hold your hand on these things, it starts getting uncomfortably hot. Yeah. I mean, you can hold your hand on it. It's not going to burn. It's this diffuser plate was kind of ice cold. It's probably about 40 degrees ambient, and yeah, very soft, gentle heat on this side. So I think I made a good decision to not put these directly on the battery to diffuse it instead. Not a whole lot of extra work. Most of the work was in tidying up the wires and getting things crimped, cutting the actual plate, and that was pretty easy. So I think, yeah, overall, I'm pleased with this. So it's working. Fortunately, it's not. It's turning into late spring right now, so not sure I can. Maybe I can put the battery in the refrigerator or freezer when I'm done and give it a good test. It's just not going to get cold enough the rest of this year to really do a good test. So that's it for right now.